Wait until you see what we found in this kitchen sink, or behind the wall that is. Now if you have copper drainage, you could be having this problem and don't even know it. Now this sink was plumbed in about 5 years ago when they redid the kitchen, and they left the copper pipe in the wall. Now copper pipe is a good drainage, however it is susceptible to breaking down essentially, especially when you put chemicals. I know Drano is not a great one for metal piping. If you have metal piping, any kind of acid or anything like that, it doesn't pick and choose what it eats. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to open up where I know the drain is going, and I just want to find how far this damage has gotten, because we have found water in behind the vanity. So what I'll do is I'll cut the vapor barrier. That'll have to be patched after the fact, and I'll expose the copper piping. Now what I'm doing is I'm feeling for moisture, and I don't feel any moisture here. However, I will have to open up this section anyways to make the connection back to plastic. So at this point again, I'm feeling for moisture. Now I can see water on the bottom plate, and you can see where it has built up there. So there definitely has been water here. However, it's on the other side of the stud where it enters underneath the sink. So what I'll have to do is open this up now and expose this piping. Now I have sped a lot of this up and I made cuts. I'm getting a little better at it. I could still use work. I'm not going to quit my day job anytime soon. But once I expose this pipe, I'm pretty sure that's where my problem was the entire time. Now unfortunately, when copper starts to rot, that typically means the whole thing's about to go. And you can see here, when I run the sink, you can see what kind of leak that is and what kind of damage that has caused. So at some point this will have to be addressed. What we're doing today is getting the kitchen sink back up and running until a game plan can be put together. So we'll cut a section back where I removed the drywall in behind the dishwasher. And at that point I can assess the condition of the copper and if we can actually get it up and running today, or do we have to start plan A today? And hopefully that won't be the case. Now I will be replacing this with plastic pipe. Plastic pipe does last a tremendous amount longer than metal piping. We started using plastic, I don't know, someone help me out, maybe the 80s? Could even been, probably the 80s I'd say. And it has proven to have a much longer lifespan. So I'll just get this pipe cut out here. I'm using an oscillating tool, which works good in areas like this. It takes a little bit longer than a Sawzall, but you don't rattle the heck out of everything while you're doing it. So now that I've got the pipe off, I can check. And a basic way that I check it, I've worked with it enough, is to just squeeze it. And if you can compress it, then it's gone. Sometimes it'll just crack right in your hands. But this one still has a little bit of life left in it, which should buy us enough time to, like I said, get a plan together to remove all of it, because it does go down to the basement and the basement is finished. So at this point I'll remove this P-trap assembly, which I'm going to redo at the same time, because if you've watched any of my other previous videos, I don't like when they're put together assembled like this, and I'll show you why when we're done. It's just not the right way to do it. And at this point I can pull the section out that has the leak. Now you can see on the underside of the one section here, I'm not sure if that's corrosion buildup or maybe old plaster on it. It could be old plaster. But I'll show you this other side of this 45-degree directional change where the pipe has just split. So something has eaten away at that pipe and it's brittle and weak. I'm able to push it in with my fingers. The pipe wall has become so thin that it's compromised and done now. So at this point I can get a piece of plastic in there, ABS pipe, and this coupling is for 1.5 inch copper to 1.5 inch plastic. They do make a slightly better one in an MJ coupling, but these work just fine. So the one thing I'm going to remember to do here is to spin my gear clamps so that the drywall does not hit them. That's a big one that you'll catch later. You can see how I spin it down, and that's just so I can put that drywall back in once we repair the insulation and the vapor barrier. Obviously we'll test it all first, and I'll probably leave it exposed for a few days to get some air movement in there and time to assess what we can do to fix the damage properly. So I did have to put a coupling on because that's the longest length I can get in that wall cavity that I exposed. Not a big deal, but I put a test piece on, and that's just going to allow me to get my proper fall to the kitchen sink drain. And like I said, I'm going to replace the whole sink drain while I'm at it. It never worked properly before. It would always gurgle and back up all the time just because the way it was installed. And they sell those install kits at hardware stores, and they're just not a good way to do it. I am going to use silicone on my drains. I know that drives some people crazy, but whatever. Doesn't get me called back. If you want to use plumber's putty, go ahead. It's up to you. And we'll lock these we'll lock these basket strainers in place. And I'm looking over top of the sink right now while I do it to make sure it is centered. And we'll get both of them in. That's always your starting point when you're hooking up a kitchen sink drain assembly, is to get your basket strainers in first. After we get the basket strainers in, the next step is to put your tail pieces on. The tail pieces, lately I've been finding some companies aren't including them when you buy new basket strainers. So make sure when you buy the basket strainer that they come with the tail pieces. It's kind of a cheap out on the manufacturer's end. So once both tail pieces on, we can start to build the assembly. And what I'll do is cut a small piece for a trap adapter and glue that into a 90. And the next thing I'll do is cut another small piece, and I'll put it into a trap adapter, an ABS-T, and then I'll cut a small piece and I'll put my dishwasher Y on. The reason I do this is because it's easy to get the measurement, or the final measurement, of the horizontal section in the kitchen sink drain assembly. And I'll show you that shortly once I get this on. I know this one fights me a little bit. You can see that gasket just doesn't want to pop in all the way. It's not a bad thing that it's tight, at least. And you can see there now I can get my final measurement. And once I get that piece cut here, a quick tip is when you're making this last connection is to turn the trap assembly for the kitchen sink upside down and use the base of the cabinet to make sure everything's level, just like that. And at this point you can pop the whole assembly up and on. Next I'll cut another test piece just for my P-trap, and that'll give me my horizontal measurement to the Y I left in there. Now I didn't show, I put a Y and an end clean out in. Always put a clean out in on a kitchen sink. So now that I've got those pieces cut, I can glue in the 90-degree drop for the P-trap first, and then I'll glue in my P-trap. And I like to use a union P-trap. It's good if you ever drop something down the sink, you can remove this entire trap assembly, or kitchen sink drain assembly I should say, and just shake whatever is out in there. You can also clean it out that way. So I'll do up my nut here, and that's pretty much it for the kitchen sink drain assembly. So the last thing I'll do is just make sure to tie the dishwasher back in. And this dishwasher hose will be strapped up. You should always strap these up. If you found this information useful, we got lots of other videos on plumbing tips for homeowners and DIY people, or even plumbers. Maybe you can learn something. Thanks.